Formula One is exploring the possibility of adding more teams to the grid. According to FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem, the organisation is looking at launching an expressions of interest process for prospective new teams. So which teams will be joining the F1 grid? Stay tuned to find out. The FIA is the sport's governing body, and Ben Sulayem confirmed on Twitter that they are exploring the prospect of expanding the grid. The 2023 F1 season was set to have a record 24 races before the Chinese Grand Prix was axed, and more changes to the sport could be coming. Ben Sulayem wrote on Twitter, "I've asked my @FIA team to look at launching an expressions of interest process for prospective new teams for the FIA at F1 World Championship." Formula One experienced a merry-go-round of manufacturer teams and independent teams as the 2010s decade began. Manufacturers like Toyota, BMW, and Honda were on the verge of exiting the sport after facing unsuccessful campaigns. This led to the FIA having a similar expression of interest mechanism in place for new teams back then. In the end, a number of new teams were given an opportunity to join the sport, including HRT, US F1, Lotus Racing, and Virgin. Nevertheless, the influx of teams proved to be a failure because none of them were successful, and they all vanished by the year 2017. The American racing team known as US F1 was never even able to put together a car, let alone compete in Formula One. After all those years, Formula One probably wants to steer clear of a situation exactly like what happened in the 2010s. Even though there are a number of teams willing to join the sport, the FIA will be more stringent with its due diligence as even large manufacturers, such as BMW and Toyota, have exited the sport owing to their inability to compete. Formula One would want to ensure the long-term prospect of these entries. So, which teams could we see join the F1 grid? Michael Andretti has been exerting significant effort for some time now in order to establish his very own Formula One team. F1 is exploding in the US right now, and with 3 races on American soil coming up in 2023, it makes sense that its presence on the grid grows too. Haas has shown what's possible with limited resources. Now imagine what Andretti could achieve with a big budget entry. The Andretti name is deeply ingrained in Formula One history, and the family has already signaled that it is willing to invest the hundreds of millions of dollars that are necessary to launch a brand new Formula One team. Since the FIA made their declaration, it no longer appears like a question of if Andretti will debut in F1, but rather when they will start. Now, investment from Guggenheim Partners has been discovered to be willing to pay the $200 million admission fee, and that removes a significant obstacle from the path of Andretti establishing his own team. However, Andretti will manufacture its very own Formula One cars at a brand new plant that is going to be constructed in the city of Indianapolis. According to reports, preparations are apparently already far advanced in order to get Andretti Racing ready for 2024. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. Thanks. Calvin Lowe is one of the more abstract candidates in that he doesn't seem to have a specific proposal, but claims to have a concrete interest. F1 has always attracted individuals with either a lot of personal wealth, great connections, or both. It takes a significant amount of capital to launch a Formula One team. Calvin Lowe is in a fortunate position since he has an abundance of that. According to the reputable publication Forbes, the Hong Kong businessman's net worth is currently estimated to be $1.7 billion. By the time the Grand Prix rolls around in 2026, he plans to put some of the money toward establishing his own Formula One team. Whether Lowe is the person the FIA and current teams are waiting for remains to be seen. In contrast to Lowe, who is primarily motivated by commercial interests, Andretti is interested in joining for athletic reasons. Now that the sport is widely followed worldwide, the successful entrepreneur views Formula One as a potentially lucrative venture. If all goes according to plan, Lowe will launch the team, establish a solid base for winning races, and then pursue his goal of selling the team for a substantial profit. It was speculated for a considerable amount of time that Red Bull Racing and Porsche will form a partnership in the year 2026. The negotiations were unsuccessful because of the fact that Red Bull did not want to hand over an excessive amount of authority to the brand, which is part of the Volkswagen Group. Porsche, on the other hand, has no intention of giving up. It has been claimed that discussions are still going on with other teams, of which Porsche wants to become the engine supplier. The issue that Porsche is facing is that the percentage of factory teams in F1 is high. For example, a Mercedes-Porsche or an Alpine-Porsche partnership will look odd. It is also not obvious that McLaren CEO Zak Brown will sign over a controlling stake in the company to Porsche. Therefore, it appears that the only viable candidates are Haas and Williams. In the meantime, Porsche is extremely enthusiastic about competing in Formula One. Therefore, forming its own team, which has existed before in the past, would be the ideal solution. Porsche and Honda are almost in a similar situation. The Japanese seem to regret dropping out of the sport after Max Verstappen became the world champion in 2021 with a Honda engine. In 2022, Red Bull not only won another Drivers' Championship, but they also won the Constructors' Championship. At the back of the cars was a Honda-manufactured engine, but it was named Red Bull Powertrains. The hybrid systems battery and F1's projected 100% sustainable fuel by 2026 are the components that are most obviously consistent with Honda's commitment to prioritizing innovative carbon-neutral technology. This was Honda's official justification for leaving F1 in the first place. Already committed to being an engine supplier in 2026, Honda has signed on the dotted line. But for which team would that be appropriate? Will there be yet another partnership with Red Bull in the end? If this scenario plays out, Honda's involvement will be significantly reduced compared to the past because Red Bull will construct their engines in-house. Also, Honda joining a relatively small team such as Williams is unquestionably not up to the standard of ambition that Honda has set for itself. Therefore, putting together its own squad would be the best possible alternative to this situation. Ford has a Formula One background that is a little bit strange. Its most successful time in the sport was spent with the Ford Badge Cosworth DFV engines, while its sole official works team, Jaguar, which competed from 2000 to 2004, was a disaster. However, it is known that Ford has been having conversations with the Formula One organization behind the scenes. These negotiations have focused on the new engine regulations that will go into effect in 2026. However, it is claimed that Ford is more interested in striking a sponsorship or branding deal than it is in acquiring a stake in the team or having technological input into an engine program. The most likely reason for Ford's interest is that the company wants to capitalize on Formula One's expansion, particularly in the United States, as well as the sport's commitment to environmental stewardship by introducing a new engine formula that will feature an improved electrical component and fuels that are 100% sustainable. Red Bull appears to be the most likely contender for an engine branding arrangement that, if it went through, might be comparable to the one that Cosworth DFV had. There has been no official statement or confirmation from Ford, and the company has not responded to or denied any of the several rumors that have been circulating. As FIA is about to begin the process of adding a new team to the grid, some team bosses of the current F1 grid aren't happy about the move, the most vocal being Toto Wolff. Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team principal, expressed how he is against the idea and explained how it will dilute all the finances. Since teams obtain their annual income from the prize pot, adding more teams will decrease the amount of money being distributed amongst all the teams competing in the sport. Wolff said, "If a team comes in, how can you demonstrate that you're bringing in more money than it's actually costing? Because the 11th team means a 10% dilution for everybody else." Toto Wolff further mentioned how the new teams that could join the sport in the future would most likely not have enough money to increase the prize pot and maintain the amount that is given to each team. The Mercedes boss also spoke about how F1 will benefit from a limited number of franchises. He said, "So, if one is able to demonstrate that, then we should all be sitting around the table and cheering for such an entry, but that hasn't been demonstrated yet." And that may sound a bit dry because it comes down to the numbers, but the value of Formula One is that it's a limited number of franchises, and we don't want to dilute that value by just adding teams. Which teams do you want to see in Formula One? Let us know in the comment section below. That will be all for today's video. Thanks for staying tuned. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so that you can always get to watch more amazing videos like this. See you in the next video.